Hey, hi, I'm Todd, and I'm here to talk about expanding our vision with Merb. Sounds really lofty and everything. So technically it's like advanced Merb, but it's not really. It's more like adventurous Merb. I really struggled with exactly what this talk, the scope of it was. So if you don't get anything out of this talk at all, other than this single point I'm about to tell you, just pay attention to this. Give yourself constraints, even for things like presentations, because it makes your life a little bit more difficult when you don't. So I'm Todd. You can refer to me as Todd. I'm on IRC and GitHub. I developed a framework called Halcyon. Don't use it. Merb is awesome. High Groove Studios is where I work in Atlanta, and I'm officially called a developer and OSS architect, which is awesome. Anyway, that's an interesting picture. And I like beer. So I want to give you some expectations for this talk, because I told you it was about being adventurous and everything. So first of all, I'm not an expert. But who is really an expert other than maybe core developers and regular contributors to Merb? So I'm not an expert, but I like experimenting with new concepts, and I like this test-driven development where we develop the product to see if it, or project to see if it actually works. I do that a lot, with Merb especially, because it's really easy, and you can experiment a whole lot. Definitely encourage you to do that. There are some problems with what I did for this presentation. So developing solutions for problems is exactly the right way to produce quality production code. But then when you start developing code because you have an example that you want to make a point of, you know, your code is probably not exactly brilliant or amazing, and you might not get a lot from it, but at least it works, right? So I use some of those examples. Just kind of keep that in mind. Plus I have a lack of imagination, so just fair warning. So ultimately, I'm not trying to be super serious about this, because I want you to enjoy this talk. I'm still trying to be fast, too. And tonight, people are going to die. So the more interesting part about Merb and about the web development in general is not necessarily for foreground or the forefront, the prominent, the important position, such as your HTML. That's pretty, yeah, but it doesn't do a whole lot, because GitHub, everything interesting happens in the back. It hosts your repository. It automatically calls Git GC for you. It allows you to fork projects, and yeah, you have to initialize or initiate that action through the front, but the interesting stuff happens on the back. So it's not as interesting as the background. Please don't be offended. So let's move on to actually some interesting stuff, the background. Here we have a lot of different things going on in the background. We have databases and modifying data there, cache, background processes, web services. I'm just reading this list. You can read it yourself. I'm not going to talk about all of that. I really want to touch on stuff that hasn't been talked about today or very often. A lot of people don't really know much about, and stuff I just created for the presentation. So bear with me. So background processes, I'm not really an expert on this at all. I don't do it too much, but there are a couple of different approaches. If you have cron, you can just set up some rake tasks, which is a clean way to develop just tasks in general that you can run whenever you want. That makes it really simple. Here's an example of a rake task for clearing out inactive nodes, and this is from a project I'm going to show you in a little bit. So, but you have this weird little scanning thing that happens very often. So you might have cron set up to do this. It's not the only way to do it. You have these things in Merb called render then call and then run later. And I think there's some others like deferring routes, and you have deferring actions, rendering and whatnot for slower actions. But specifically, you have like render then call, which sends whatever render stuff you want to do right before the do, the start of the do block. You would actually render your HTML or whatever file. And that's what's going on here. And then you have this node inactive purge that gets executed after the response has already been sent to the server, and then you've cleared out your request queue for other requests to come in. So it keeps your application very zippy and gets longer running processes. That might slow it down a split second, but it keeps it from affecting other requests that much better. So you can use it often. I don't know if there's a recommendation to use it more often or not. I don't know. We'll just have to see from production. Then there's run later. You can just say, hey, run this later, like after the end of this call. And I think they're really close to the same thing, but there's like subtle differences. I don't know just yet, but as you can see. But we'll talk a little bit more about that particular project, which I call Conley later. I'll mention it again. So web services. Just want to mention, these pictures that I'm using here are from the LHC, which is probably one of the most crazy photogenic places I've seen in a long time. So I really hope you enjoy those and just realize that the end of the world is not coming in a few months. Web services are software systems designed to support interoperable machine-to-machine interaction over a network. That's what Wikipedia says. I call it a service over the web just for apps. It's really simple. JSON is really fucking awesome. Here's some JSON. And I prefer to use JSON. I don't like XML, but you might have the requirement to support XML. But I prefer JSON requests, which is just JavaScript object notation. It's super simple. There's a C library that makes it really fast, and it compiles on whatever platforms, most of the platforms available. So yeah, it's going to be fast. And obviously web services, we want to touch on the concept of being RESTful. It makes designing your applications very simple. When you're doing RESTful web services, you expose these objects such as node or comment or whatever you want to provide as a service, and then these common idioms create themselves for delete this particular node. So you have create, read, update, delete, and then you have list too at the top. And you say just objects.json. Merb knows what to do with that because you tell it that you expect to serve out JSON. Merb does it with provides and then render and display. You can use render or display. There are probably others. You could probably just give it a regular string. But yeah, so provides. Sorry if you're offended. Well, I don't care. So right there you can see, number one, we can tell that the whole entire posts we want to expose as a web service with JSON. You could add comma XML there if you want to. And if you really wanted to, it automatically assumes you serve HTML as well. If you wanted to, you could say only _provides JSON, and then all you have is just a JSON web service, which is useful if you want to have a whole web application that has no HTML whatsoever, which is the reason why Halcyon is no longer relevant. So here we have, we're just getting post and then displaying it. Actually, you should display at post. I forgot that, whatever. I think I fixed it in the next one. So when they ask for XML, you know, they're not going to get it. They're instead going to say 4.6 not acceptable, because one of the things that it does is it content negotiates. And I'll actually touch on that in a second here and show you why Merb is superior in that regard to Rails. And here we have display actually doing the right thing. Sorry. But yeah, that's it. And here's the content negotiation. Obviously, you have to pair the, on the bottom, we have the Merb way. And so you have to pair it with the provides. Or maybe you don't. I don't know. But I always do. So you say you expect HTML and JSON, and so you say whenever somebody's requesting HTML, you render, and whenever somebody's requesting JSON, you display post to JSON. Makes sense. However, when you are in Rails land, you do respond to, do format HTML render. I think it actually does render for you. So whatever, format JSON at post to JSON. So there's an interesting little thing that happens with this is because there's two blocks there for JSON. So you have respond to, and then there's the format JSON block. Having this specific API is really slow because creating a proc and then calling it, there's a lot of method invocation, and that's just slow in Ruby just generally. So I did a little bit of really quick benchmarks, and don't take this as like gold, but when you have this mocked out just to do nothing, and you use the same idioms, respond to is about 10 times slower than just the regular case, even when you include the functionality that goes in with the provides. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you have millions of requests over a month even, like a year even, that adds up. Just keep that in mind. Because when you start getting those million requests in weeks at a time, it then adds up. Obviously, he doesn't like the Rails way either. So embedded components. It sounds like something like sockets, but it's not. Although maybe it could be. It's if you look at this web page that I developed. This is Aceldama. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but that's the project name I gave it. But if you look at these comments on the right, Sloppy Joe. Anybody know that from SNL? But all of that right there rendered for the comment system is just a really short call to a JavaScript thing. And what it does is it renders an empty div, and then it tells after the document object model actually gets fully loaded to run this code to actually pull in all of these comments in the empty comments div. So it makes like embeddable objects really easy, and it's pretty cool. I don't know if you've seen this before or made it before. Well, you've probably seen it. Discuss, it's embeddable comments. That's kind of where I got the inspiration, stole the idea from. But it's really simple, actually. I'm going to actually try and show you real quick some of the code. How am I doing on time? Yes, I'm working on it. Is that big enough? That's too big. How do you tell it to hide the doc real quick? Control Alt. Yeah, there we go. Yep. That's not what should be there. So yeah, okay. So you've seen this. For this particular example, actually, you include a little page. And I don't know if there's a better way to do that. I just did this quickly because I was running out of time. But you just embed what page it is supposed to be on. And then when you come over here, you have this page. And it loads the comments. Some new stuff. But you can just, obviously, this stuff is not production worthy, because it doesn't actually get you to log in and everything. You wouldn't normally want that, but it works, and that's the point. So then you can go over to comments and say, this all works, so this is why I'm showing you this. I do these verbose things. I don't know if there's a better way. I'm sure there is. I'm really sorry if I offend any data mapper gurus, but whatever. So here I say I provide JS and JSON. Like I said, I didn't have a whole lot of time to do this, and I had a lot of brain farts on the way, so. So JS and JSON, and down here I actually say if I'm doing JS, render this little template that I have here, which this is a whole lot more than in the slide that I showed you, and that's because I tried to make it pretty too. I had to write this little helper called document write, which splits out all these lines up and does a document.write for each one. It's kind of hacky, but it works. It made my life a little bit simpler. And then here's the actual stuff, but I won't digress too much. I hope maybe I already have, but whatever. So if you want to check out the code and actually try to reuse some of those ideas, ACELDAMA, it's under github.com, I'm Todd. It's just glorified JavaScript and some Ajax too, like very little of it. Distributed grid mesh apps is just basically I have two separate Merb application instances that share data together, and I actually just made it as an exposed web service, what I was just talking about, to talk to each other. So I have these little links that I want to rate personally, and then this other application. So basically what you could be doing is have an application in Atlanta, and then have an application in San Francisco, and then you have these two different communities with these different opinions and experiences, and they're all giving their opinion on something, and then they are taking both the information from the Atlanta community and from the whatever community, and merging them to get these opinions. 100% of the people like Google, and nobody likes GitHub and Todd. That's okay. Obviously, I haven't rated all of those, and this is a terrible designed application, but I had to do it really quickly, so I hope you understand. This application does something interesting. It spawns a background process when you click on scan, and it just scans the network for other nodes, whichever responds to create. They respond with the created method. If you hit this nodes.js with your information, so it's both accepting create messages, and it's telling you that you should also register them. So there's both of these creates going on each side. So that's how you can actually realize both of these nodes are in existence, and so you should start sharing data. There's also, they keep track of activity, so if one drops off the map, then it just realizes that it's no longer there. It stops keeping track of that node, and it doesn't ask it for its opinions anymore. You just keep that up with scan. And this is where you'd use some background processes to keep those nodes kind of cleaned up and everything. Which here's two nodes that I had in this room right here. 8482 and 8481. Those are the two ports that I just had it running on my local machine, but you could have this running on your machine right here, and I could connect to you, and we could start sharing opinions on websites. It's really interesting. There's two different ways you could do these kind of distributed applications. This is not new. I don't even know why I put these slides in, maybe because I thought they looked pretty. So hopefully everybody here understands that you could have a master process kind of coordinating all of the events if you have just one person or one application wanting to control who's sharing information from, or you can have this just distributed. There's other ways than everybody just being aware of everybody, maybe just like a little ring that works really well too. And that's not new. I'm sorry if I'm boring you. Slave master and node, I probably should have put that at the beginning. Whatever. So here we have sites. This web application is I called Conley, and sites just lists all the sites and allows you to rate things with ratings and everything. But on the web service side, you have the actual sites that get shared between the two applications. So every application will ask a node, hey, what sites do you have? Let me update my list. And on the right, it will say, okay, now I need to get the ratings for those. So give me the ratings for this particular site right here. And it's obviously the ID. And it'll give back the ratings for that particular site. Let me just show it to you really, really quickly. This is, oh. Never mind, just whatever. It's not important. Yeah, if you want to, you can get on the GitHub site and just clone it from the command line and try to run it. I haven't updated it for 0.9 and above just yet, so it might still be broken. It still uses like rake dmdb migrate, so I'll update it as soon as I can. But just look at the code. It's also interesting. Here's rack. Rack is the really cool layer in between Merb and the server. And let's just go ahead and get over the picture that y'all are all expecting. Oh, wait, that's not it, is it? Of course, I wouldn't include pictures that you wouldn't be expecting. But of course, we don't want sexual harassment, so I'll try to keep it to a minimum. But rack is really awesome. Come on now. Rack is really awesome. It's the framework's framework. It makes framework developers' lives easier. And if you really want to, you can make a whole web application with framework or with Rack. It's really kind of low level, and that's awesome. If you really need to get nitty-gritty, get down into it, you can get some really blazing fast interactions. You could do some amazing things. And the reason is because Rack sits in between Mongrel and Merb, or Fin, or Ebb. I mentioned that later too in the slides, so don't think I only use Mongrel. So this middleware is kind of mysterious. I'll touch on it in a second. So yeah, all these are supported. I'm sorry, my brain is going crazy right now. So this is what a Rack application kind of looks like. You could actually just do a lambda, excuse me. But all you have to do is have an object that responds to call and accepts one parameter, which is the environment variable or environment information, which includes path info, HTTP referrer, all of this information that Merb and Rack have kind of packaged up really nicely for you if you choose to use their objects. But here, minimally, if they go to your application, no matter what URL they'll go to, they'll always get a 200 OK response. Very plain, very simple. So the stuff that you can do with it is a whole lot. That's just the very essential. You can expand from there. You can make it your bitch. Here's middleware. I thought the middle one was kind of funny. Rack middleware are kind of like mini apps. They can modify the env of the environment, and they can avoid passing through to your framework. So if you actually want to make sure that Merb isn't having to go through all of the process and everything and really just kind of stop some kind of malicious attack or just some conditions, you can be very specific and say, I want to perform some specific action with this one particular request. This is almost exactly like the basic Rack application that I showed you. So it's still a Rack application, but what it does is it just chains down to the next layer of application. These middleware accept in their initialize as another application. So this could be Merb application. You would then, on call, you would do your voodoo right there before the app call, or maybe afterwards, depending on what you're doing. I actually compiled a whole bunch of Rack applications that are really interesting. And how much time do I have? Not much time at all, right? So you can just go on there, and there's like 15 different Rack applications that are all applicable. Half of them are stolen from what's inside of Merb Core's little repository of middleware that you have available. So check it out. It's really interesting. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed it.